In the last episode, I showed you how to make your own collectible card game inside of Minecraft using map art. So in this episode, I wanted to talk about the one that I made. Check the video description for a link to my Discord, where I posted all the resources for you to import this game into your own world. All you have to do is save the pictures of the cards off of the Discord and then upload them to your world using the image map software. If you're not sure how to do this, check out my previous video of how to make your own collectible card game inside of Minecraft. But in this video, I will show you exactly how to play the card game that I came up with. It's really similar to the classic card game called Duel Masters. If you ever played that back in the day, you will definitely have a head start when it comes to learning the card game that I created here. But let's start off this video by talking about what you will need for the game arena. Each player will need their own shuffler to shuffle their deck and allow them to draw cards, and each player will need their own discard pile in the form of a container. And if you don't know how to make a card shuffler, I tutorialed out one in my last video. Each player will also need 5 redstone lamps that can be toggled on and off. These represent your armor or shields. If you get attacked when you have no armor left, you will lose the game. And you will need 10 redstone lamps that will activate sequentially. You can either do this automatically, which I will tutorial out at the end of the video, or you can simply place levers next to these lamps and do it manually as the turns progress. These will be activated at the end of the second player's turn and will count the number of turns that have gone by so that each player knows how much mana they have to spend on any given turn. And lastly, for the play area, you will just need item frames. It doesn't really matter how many item frames, you will just need enough for the player to continually play cards. A deck consists of a shulker box completely full of cards. So a deck is 27 cards or 3 rows of maps. You can have up to 3 copies of any card, but make sure they don't stack. You can do this by renaming them on an anvil. I like to write the card's cost and then the name of the mob that it represents, followed by a period or a space and then a period or 2 spaces and then a period, just to make sure that they don't stack. But now let's take a look at the cards. Currently, there is only one type of card, and that is a mob. Every card has a cost in the upper left-hand corner, which is tied into the turn counter, these lamps on the ground. So on turn 1, you can only play a single cost 1 card. On turn 2, you can play a single cost 2 card, or 2 cost 1s, so on and so forth. There are also 6 different abilities that I will also be going over later, but we have Defender, who can block attacks but cannot attack themselves, Plus Power, which gains that much power when attacking, Draw a card. When this card is played, you will immediately draw a card, Hunter, which is allowed to attack untapped creatures, Double Breaker, which breaks 2 armor upon a successful attack, and Vigilance, which untaps at the end of the turn, in addition to untapping at the beginning of the turn as normal. These reference maps are also included in the Discord. At the beginning of every turn, you will untap your cards, and then play cards, then attack, and then draw 1 at the end of your turn. So let's say it's turn 3. This means that you can play cards whose total cost is equal to or less than 3. So I could play a single cost 3, or I could play a cost 2 and a cost 1, or just a single cost 2, or up to 3 cost 1s. But they all have to be the same color. Your deck can have as many colors as you want, but you're always limited to playing 1 color per turn. After you get done playing cards, it's time to attack. Now monsters played this turn cannot attack. They have summoning sickness. Normally you would tap to attack, but again monsters played this turn cannot attack. Now if you played this monster last turn, and then this turn you played a zombie, now it's time to attack so you can attack with the Strider. When attacking, you tap the monster that is attacking, and then declare whether you're targeting the player or whether you're targeting a monster. Normally, monsters can only attack tapped monsters. They cannot attack untapped monsters. So in this case, the Strider could only attack the player because they don't have any tapped monsters. Now if the other player had a Defender, these monsters can block attacks. You can also attack individually, 1 monster at a time, or with multiple monsters all at once. So in this case, if the Strider attacks, since the other player doesn't have any blockers, they will lose 1 armor. Anytime you lose an armor, you get to draw a card. But let's pretend that this Strider is tapped and that we didn't play the zombie this turn. That means that this zombie can either attack the player or it can attack that Strider. Whenever 2 monsters fight, you compare their power, so 15 versus 1000. Whichever monster has the lowest power gets sent to the discard pile. And if both monsters have the same power, they both get sent to the discard pile. After a monster attacks, unless it has Vigilance, it will stay tapped until the beginning of your next turn. At the beginning of your turn, you untap all of your creatures, play cards, and then attack. If a player has no armor left with no defenders and you attack successfully, that player loses the game. At the end of your turn, you will draw 1 card from your deck. If you run out of cards, you keep playing without being able to draw. And the player that goes second after they draw every turn, they advance the turn counter by 1. And before I show you how to build the automated turn counter, I'm going to play an example game against Bob the Armor Stand. So after both players place their deck in the shuffler to have it shuffled, you will start off by drawing a starting hand of 5. And after you've drawn your starting hand, you can put any of the cards that you drew back into your deck and then draw back up to 5. You can do this one time at the very beginning of the game. In general, it might be a good idea to pitch back your high-cost cards or try to get multiples of the same color so that you can play multiple cards on the same turn early on. But once you and your opponent have decided your starting hand and decided who goes first, it is now turn 1 for the first player. So you can play a single cost 1 card, so I'm going to go ahead and play a Strider. You can also play these anywhere on the board. It doesn't matter where you play them. And now it's time to end my turn. Normally I would draw a card, but whoever goes first doesn't draw a card on their very first turn. And now it's Bob's turn. Bob decides to play a cost 1 goat because it's turn 1, and since that's all he can do, he ends his turn, advancing the turn counter by 1 and drawing his card. So now it's my turn again. Now it's turn 2, so I can play a single cost 2 or 2 cost 1s. I decide to play a Drowned, and since Bob has a blocker, I could attack with my Strider, but if I do, because his defender is stronger than me, I would just lose my Strider. He could block, and then my Strider would die, so that's not a very good idea. Whenever a blocker blocks, it is just like if you attacked a tapped monster. The 2 monsters will battle, compare the power, and the weakest one will get discarded. And in the case of ties, they will both get discarded. But that's all I can do for my turn, so I will end my turn and draw my card. And now it's Bob's turn 2. So Bob wants to play 2 cost 1s, but he doesn't have 2 cost 1s of the same color. So he can't do this. You can only play 1 color of card per turn. So instead of that, Bob decides to play a cost 2 zombie, and now since that zombie is just played, he can't attack, and neither can his defender, because defenders can't attack. So all Bob can do is advance the turn counter by 1 and draw his card to end the turn. And now it's my turn. Since it's turn 3, I could play a cost 3, but I don't have it. Instead, I need a defender, so I will just play a goat. And since my Strider and my Drowned were played on previous turns, they can attack. I have to target Bob directly with the attack because he doesn't have any tapped monsters, but he does have a blocker. So he will tap the blocker to show that it's blocking, and then declare that he's blocking the Drowned. And since my Drowned has less power than Bob's goat, my Drowned will get sent to the discard pile. But since Bob doesn't have any other defenders, the Strider's attack will be successful. That means that Bob will lose 1 armor point. And since Bob lost an armor, he gets to draw a card. Take that, Bob. But since I have no more untapped monsters that can attack, that ends my turn, so I will draw a card. Now it's Bob's turn, so he starts off by untapping his tapped monsters, and since it's his turn 3, he can now play cards whose total cost is equal to or less than 3. He has a cost 3, so he will play a Piglin. After he plays cards, it's now time to attack. So he can attack with his zombie, and since my Strider is tapped, his zombie could attack me or it could attack my Strider. Bob will tap his zombie and declare that he's attacking my Strider, looking for revenge. I decide to save my goat for later and not block his attack. So, since the zombie is stronger than my Strider will get sent to the discard pile. And since his Piglin was played this turn, he won't be able to attack with it. But the Piglin has Hunter, so later on, it can attack untapped monsters. But that's all he can do for now, so he will advance the turn counter and draw his card. Now it's my turn again, and it's turn 4, so I can play a Blaze. This Blaze has plus power, so he becomes really strong whenever he attacks. But the plus power is only counted when the Blaze is attacking, so all I can do is end my turn. But now it's Bob's turn 4, so first he untaps his monsters, and then he can play his cards. He decides to play a cost 4 Blaze, just like me, and now since he's played cards, it's time to attack. He has a zombie and a Piglin who can both attack. But rather than attack with both mobs at the same time, he decides to just attack with his zombie. If I block with my goat now, then I won't have a blocker to block the Piglin from hunting my Blaze. So I'll let the attack go through, losing an armor point, which allows me to draw a card. But now he can still attack with his Piglin. So the Piglin will attack, and since it has Hunter, he can target my untapped monsters. So he will target my Blaze. This time I will block with my goat because I don't want to lose my Blaze. My Blaze only has 2000 power. If it defends, it only gains the plus power when attacking. So I will sacrifice my goat in order to save my Blaze. But Bob's now out of monsters who can attack, so he will end his turn advancing the turn counter. And things are starting to look pretty bad for me, so on my turn 5 I will play a Drowned and an Axolotl. And now that I've played cards, it's time to attack with my Blaze. And since I could target tapped monsters, my Blaze decides to attack his Piglin. My Blaze also gains the plus power because it's attacking, which means my Blaze has a power of 6,000 right now. Bob decides to sacrifice his goat in order to save his piglin. So the goat gets sent to the discard pile since it has a much lower power, but that's all I can do, so now I will end my turn. Bob starts off his turn by untapping his monsters, and it's now his 5th turn, so he could play a cost 5, but instead he decides to play a cost 1 and a cost 4. They're both red, so this is totally okay, but since Bob can't play any more cards, it's time to attack. He decides to attack me with his Blaze and his zombie, just to see what my defender is going to do. And I decide not to block, so this time I lose 2 armor, which means I get to draw 2 cards. You get to draw 1 card for every armor point lost. I still have my blocker, and he still has his piglin. Since my blocker is much stronger than his piglin though, he decides not to attack with it. So instead, he will end his turn, advancing the turn counter by 1 and drawing his card. And things are really not looking so good for me, so I will play another Drowned and another Axolotl. Hopefully, my Axolotls will be able to defend me. And now Bob doesn't have any defenders at all, so he can't block my attacks. So in that case, I will attack with my Blaze, targeting his Blaze. And since plus power only works when attacking, my Blaze is stronger than his Blaze, so his Blaze will get discarded. And then I will attack with the Drowned I played last turn, and I basically have to target him because my Drowned is pretty weak. So Bob loses 1 armor and gets to draw 1 card. And that's all I can do, so I will now end my turn and draw my card. And now it's Bob's turn again. He's excited that he finally has some defenders to play, and so he forgets to untap his zombie. But that's totally fine, he can untap his zombie now. And now it's time for Bob to go on the offensive. I only have 2 blockers, and he has 4 monsters who can attack. So he decides to attack with all 4 monsters all at the same time and target me. I only have 2 armor points left, so I definitely have to block 2 of these attacks or I lose the game. So one of my Axolotls decides to block his piglin, and the other Axolotl will block his zombie. My Axolotls are stronger than both his piglin and his zombie, so they will both get sent to the discard pile. But that means that I can't block the last 2 attacks, so I will lose my last 2 armor points. That's not good, but it's not over yet. You have to attack a player with no armor before they actually lose the game. So I get to draw 2 cards because I lost 2 armor points, but now if I get attacked again, I lose. But now it's my turn. Let's see if I can get out of this sticky situation. First, I will untap all my monsters, and since it's turn 7, I can play a Blaze and a Piglin. And since their total cost equals 7, that's all I can play, so now it's time to attack. I really need to get rid of his monsters, so I will use my Blaze and attempt to attack his Blaze. But since Bob just played 2 blockers, he will sacrifice one of his goats to block the attack. The goat will get discarded, but the Blaze will survive. I really wish I had some stronger monsters, but I will use my Drowned to attack his Strider. The goat will block, so my Drowned will die. But I still have one more Drowned who can attack, so my Drowned will also attack his Strider, and since he has no more defenders, the Strider and the Drowned will battle and both get discarded since they both have a power of 1000. But now I have no more monsters who can attack, so I have to end my turn drawing my card. So now it's Bob's turn 7, so he starts off by untapping his monsters, and now he can play cards. He decides to play an Axolotl and 2 Drowned. That's really not good for me, because now he has more attackers than I have defenders, and even though they can't attack this turn, I can't take a single attack or I lose the game. Then Bob decides to attack with his Blaze because it's stronger than my Axolotls after the plus power, and I'm forced to block or lose the game, so one of my Axolotls will get discarded. But thankfully, that's all he can do because he has no more monsters who can attack this turn, so he will end his turn advancing the turn counter and drawing his card. And on my turn, I don't have any defenders to play, so I'm going to play an Ele, which allows me to immediately draw 1 card. So I'm really hoping to draw a blue defender that I can play. And that's not a blue or a defender, so that's all I can play for this turn. I have no other blue cards that are low enough cost, and it looks like I'm going to lose this game. I'll still play it out to see if Bob happens to misplay, but he has 3 monsters that can attack and I only have 1 defender, so I have to kill 2 of his monsters this turn or I'm going to lose. So my Blaze will attack his Blaze, but he decides to block with his goat. His goat will get discarded, but since my attack didn't go through, his Blaze is still alive. My second Blaze will attack, targeting his Blaze yet again, but he will defend with his Axolotl, and since my Blaze has plus power, it is stronger than his Axolotl, so his Axolotl will get discarded. And since my Ele can't attack because I played it this turn, and my Axolotl can't attack because it has Defender, the only one I have left is my Piglin. But since my piglin has Hunter, that means he can target untapped monsters, so he can kill one of Bob's drowned. And since Bob has no more defenders, there's nothing he can do about it. Take that, Bob. But sadly, that's all I can do, so all that's left is to end my turn and draw my card. And Bob is so excited, seeing victory in sight, he plays his cards before untapping his monster. But that's okay, because I only have one defender, and he has 2 attackers, so all he has to do is attack with both of his monsters, and I lose the game! I can only block one of them with my axolotl, and I have no armor left, so I lose. And that means I lost to Bob the Armor Stand! Congratulations, Bob, you played a really good game. And really quick, before I build the automated turn counter, let's go over Vigilance and Double Breaker, since we didn't see that in this example game. Vigilance means that they untap at the end of your turn, just like they untap at the beginning of your turn. So if they attack, then they will untap at the end of the turn, making them a little bit safer. Basically, only hunters can attack cards with Vigilance. And Double Breaker means that it breaks 2 armor upon a successful attack. So if my opponent doesn't have any defenders and I attack with my Double Breaker, they will lose 2 armor, not just 1. That also means that they get to draw a card for every armor lost, so in this case they will draw 2 cards. Now if a monster with Double Breaker attacks and they only have 1 shield, you just break that 1 shield. You don't actually win the game. You still have to get a direct attack with a monster upon a player with no shields for you to win the game. And at the end of the match, be sure to pick up all your cards and put them back into your deck box. Do this by simply pressing the button on the shuffler until all of your cards have come out of the shuffler. And that's it for the rules and stuff. I really hope that this made sense. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask me on Discord or ask me in the comments here. I will be more than happy to help you out. And now it's time to build the automated turn counter. Here we have a lever that will drain the lights, and then a button that will add 1 light each time the button is pressed. The way this works is we have 2 droppers facing into each other. One of them is full of non-stackable items. The button sends power to one of those droppers, which will shoot a non-stackable item into the other dropper. The other dropper is being looked at by a comparator, so every time it receives a non-stackable item, it will increase the signal strength. So if it has 1 non-stackable item, it will have a signal strength of 2, so the first redstone light will be powered at a signal strength of 2. Let me just break these so that it's easier to see, and then we'll just look at an overview so you can build it from a picture. Also, this very first light should always be on, so you can just place a lever near that light to keep it always on. Because you're never going to have a turn 0, it's always at least going to be turn 1. So here we have, pressing the button adds 1 sword into this dropper, and so it now has a signal strength of 2, which would then power that second light. But if we press the button a second time, now there will be 2 non-stackable items in that dropper, which has a signal strength of 4. So the next light needs to be powered at a signal strength of 4, which means that we don't even need a repeater. And so you can either build this by just working your way up, adding 1 sword each time, and running redstone dust and repeaters to the corresponding light, or you can just take a screenshot right here and build it from a picture. And then to drain the lights, you have a lever that activates a clock. So in this case, we have a redstone torch on the other side of the lever, and then a clock attached to that redstone torch. And that clock is sending power to the dropper with the comparator on it. So the clock will force the items back into the original dropper, thus draining the scoreboard. But again, if you don't want to do this, you can always just use levers to activate the lights manually. I also have another video on all sorts of different kinds of scoreboards, some of which would be perfect for this as well. I will link that video right here on the screen, but that's all we got for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope it made sense. Again, if you have any questions whatsoever, come talk to me on Discord or talk to me in the comments, and I will do my best to help you out. Also, if you have any requests, let me know and I will do my best to get it done. But that's all we got for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think or what you would like to see in the future. But until next time, I've been your host, OmLedu, hopefully teaching you a Minecraft trick or two, and reminding you, as always, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye!